All right, let's go ahead and get started. Brief introduction from my side, guys. My name is Zika. Again, I'm one of the dedicated customer success managers over here at Map My Customers. Today, we're going to be going through the basics of importing, making sure that everyone really understands some different importing scenarios, understands the importance of data hygiene and data integrity. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. I'm sure everyone's going to have questions on this. This is the thing I get the most questions on. So I'm sure, hopefully we can clarify some of those things for you guys. Having said all of that, let's go ahead and jump in. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my screen. And the first thing you're going to be able to see is actually really exciting. And it is an Excel file. So give me just 1 second here to get that pulled up for you guys. All right, can everyone see my screen? Also important to mention, as we're going through, if you guys have any questions or anything, we do have the chat feature enabled in the Zoom, so you can go ahead and leave your question there, and we also have a Q&A section as well. So I'm hoping everyone can hear me. Let me see here. Yes, I can see the Excel file. Perfect. All right, so we will go ahead and move forward with this, guys. So let me just quickly break down what we're looking at here. This is basically a sample Excel file that we made in order to help you better understand how to import your files. So essentially what you're looking at is all of the gray columns here, everything that you see in gray all the way up to column M are what we call standard fields. These are fields that every account across all of Map My Customers user base has because they're inherent to every single account. And then the ones to the left here, or the ones to the right here that we created are just some custom fields that you might want to create just because it's important to your business that you have the sales region, maybe the payment preference, excuse me, available in Map My Customers. So let me go ahead and start all the way over here to the left. And there's a couple of things that I want to touch on. First and foremost, this column A, it contains what we call a account number or a unique identifier. The basic purpose of this number here is to mark this account on this row. So for example, if we're looking at row 2 here, the unique identifier is 12345. That number basically corresponds to this account record, Map My Customers 240 Kent Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. So this corresponds to this account in the database. What that allows you to do is, one, keep all of your accounts unique from one another. And then two, let's say I'm trying to update some information on this record, or let's say I'm looking to create an additional record that's similar to it, and I don't want them to, merge, or maybe I do want them to merge, right? There's a bunch of different scenarios. I'm sure we're going to go through a lot of them later in the questions, but this allows you to update your Map My Customers accounts with all the different information you have because this number here is unique. And this can be any series of characters. We have people who use, numbers, letters, whatever you want to use, will allow you to create a unique identifier as long as it's different from everything else that's in your account. It'll be basically marked as that unique identifier, and that will allow you to then later on run imports, updates in mass to save you guys a lot of time and a lot of effort. So for example, what a lot of people will do, let's say they have another system they use that they integrate with, or that they're trying to pull information from, they'll actually set up their unique identifiers in MMC as whatever the unique identifiers are in their third-party system, so that makes transitions of data a lot more smooth and a lot easier to do. So does anyone have any questions about account numbers? That's a big piece of this, and I want to make sure that we kind of touch that off the top. So if anyone has any questions, definitely feel free to either put it in the chat or take note of it and bring it up during the QA section. All right, so the next things here we have are pretty standard. So we have an account number, street address, city, state, zip, country, website. The next thing, actually, let me go back here to state. One thing I would recommend for people who are importing state information is to do it like we have it here, where instead of the abbreviations, we have the states written out. This is basically just a recommendation because typically mapping softwares and mapping systems handle written out states a little bit better than they would handle acronyms. Like if it was going to be NY versus New York, typically New York is going to get handled a little bit better and with a little bit more accuracy than would NY. And so that's just a recommendation. If you guys are going through and making your databases now, and if you're kind of compiling all this information, I would lean more towards having states fully spelled out because that typically translates a little bit better. And then we have, of course, the zip code, country. Same thing applies here. I would typically write this out. So if you have, especially if you have multiple countries, if you have, Canada, United States, Mexico, and you just kind of do business in North America, I would recommend writing out United States, Canada, Mexico instead of abbreviations. So hopefully that makes sense as well. Next thing I want to jump into is actually pin color. So you have the ability to import what color your accounts are going to be, which is great. The only thing I would mention is what you can do is you can actually reach out to your support team, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. There's an intercom chat bot on the bottom of everyone's accounts, and you can actually ask. We have a finite list of acceptable colors that you can import with. The only thing I would note here is that the colors as you're importing have to be lowercase. So that's something that a lot of people get confused on, is when you're importing pin colors, make sure that you're writing them out in lowercase, just like you see here. So blue, red, green, right? Everything is lowercase. And then also just make sure that you get the list from us, because that's going to help you to understand what your limitations are as far as importing different pin colors. All right, and then we have number of employees, standard field, phone number, email, and groups. Groups is something we're actually going to get into a little bit more in a second here, but I just want to make sure. So this is the end of our standard fields, and then right here is where we start with the custom fields. So custom fields, again, are any additional information not covered in the standard fields that you want to be housed in Map My Customers. So we don't have fax as a standard field, for example. So if you want to include your fax numbers for your different accounts, that's great. Just go ahead and create that field for it. You also have sales region and payment information. It's important to note here that before you run this import, these fields have to exist in Map My Customers, meaning from my perspective, let me go ahead and switch over to a different screen here. So if I'm getting started on my end with a new account, so I just built this account called January Webinar, great. If I want to go through the process of building out my Map My Customers account, before I actually go through and import my data, I have to go through into my settings section, and I have to actually create the custom fields that I just showed you, right? So we were looking at fax number, sales region, and payment preference. You have to actually go to your settings section and create those fields so that you have somewhere to import that information into, right? Otherwise, that information wouldn't have anywhere to go once you launch that import, and so it really wouldn't work as far as pushing that data into Map My Customers. So just go over to your settings section and make sure those fields exist in the format that you want it to exist. That way, when you go to import your fax numbers, when you go to import your sales regions, it has somewhere to go. So just wanted to switch over really quickly to make that point, and then we'll come back over here to our Excel file. All right, perfect. So the reason I wanted to kind of skip over groups a little bit is because the way that you import groups is very specific. And what I mean by that is for people who have a single group, it's pretty straightforward. You just kind of select the column that you want as your group. Let's say I want my payment preferences or my sales region to be my group. Really, all you'd have to do is just go here and then title this group. And then when you're going through your import, which we'll go in a second here, you just have to make sure to match this column with the groups drop-down option in Map My Customers, right? So it's pretty straightforward. Just make sure you select the right group. I think this was called sales region before. However, for those who have multiple groups, it is a little bit more complicated, and it really honestly is not that complicated. You just have to know what you're looking at, okay? So for this particular experiment, we're going to say that we want our sales region and our payment preference to be groups. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out this column. I'm going to call this guy groups. And now basically what we want to do is essentially merge these two columns into one column, because groups can only accept one input, but we want multiple inputs, right? So what you have to do is actually called a concatenate function, right? So all you have to do is click equals, start typing C-O-N-C, and then it's the only option available, right? So C-O-N-C-A-T-E-N-A-T-E, concatenate. So click that, and then you can see the function is right there. So it opens, it starts with an open parentheses. Now, basically all I have to do is select the first option. I'm just gonna click on that, and you can see it says O2, meaning that drop down, or that column and that row. So this cell that I just marked. And then you're gonna put a comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma. That was a lot. Let me take a step back and repeat what I just did. So you put in the concatenate function, right? So everything's great. It's an open parentheses. You select the first actual data cell of the first group that you want. So in this case, it's East Coast, which is O2. And then you're going to do comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma. And then you select your next box. So for us, it's going to be P2. So you can either type it in or you can just click on the box. So now I've said, okay, I want this cell, so basically East Coast, and this cell, P2, so net 30, to basically merge. And what I'm telling the system is I want them separated by a semicolon. And then all I have to do now is just close it with another parentheses and click enter. So now you can see it says East Coast, semicolon, net 30, which is basically merging these two cells. Now all you have to do is basically just copy this down to the rest of that column. So you can see Central, net 45, Central, net 45, West Coast, net 60, West Coast, net 60. So everything is basically merged, and it's separated by a semicolon. Again, that function, I'm just going to type it out down here. It's equals concatenate, right? And then whatever the first cell is, so in this case, it was O2, and then you're going to do comma, which is a separation. So now it's into the, so you see how here it says text 1, and now it's highlighted text 2. So it thinks it's ready for the next input. So the next input for us is going to be quotations, semicolon, quotations, which is basically saying, okay, system, put that semicolon I just put in there in this function. And then the way you separate things is by a comma. So we're going to put a comma again, and then you just select the next cell. So for example, if I want to do that same thing again, you can keep going with this, right? So I would just do comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma, and I can select the next cell. So for example, if I wanted to set up groups by state, right? I just go over here to E2, click that, and then now that's part of it as well. So you can see East Coast, net 30, and New York are now highlighted. I can keep going if I wanted, right? So comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma, and then select pin color, right? And then remember to finish it off, just add a close parentheses equals, and you can see everything's broken down here. So East Coast, net 30, New York, blue, all of those are selected. If I click into it, it'll give me the function again. Right, so you can see how everything's broken down. East Coast, net 30, New York, blue. It's taken everything that I've selected and it's separated them all by semicolons. So again, it seems complicated once you're first getting started off, but in reality, it's literally 3 different steps. You just add the function, add the first group, and then just make sure that you separate each additional group by that little series of characters, which is comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma, and then just add your next group. Make sure to close it with a parentheses. Does anyone have any questions about groups and how you import them, or how you at least create the column for importing them on an Excel file? Let's see here. Create unique IDs in the Excel file. All right, so we have a couple of questions here. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of this part here. The first question I see is, how do I quickly and easily create unique IDs in the Excel file if we've never given our account unique IDs before? That's a great question. So a lot of our customers come in and they don't have existing unique IDs and they want to get started creating unique IDs. That's totally fine. It's important to note the unique IDs that you're creating only have to be unique to your business, right? So Map My Customers, we have our own set of unique IDs for every single record that exists across every single user that we have in the system, right? Those are called MMC IDs. That's separate from what you guys have. So you're basically, let's say you have 100 accounts. That means you have to create 100 different unique IDs. But it's pretty straightforward to do. Excel makes it pretty easy. So let's say we were going to create unique IDs in this column Q here. So we're going to call this unique IDs, or you could also call it account number, just anything that you would be able to recognize. And then I could do something as simple as say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Just kind of give it a series. And then I could literally just drag this. So I'm just going to highlight the area that I've put so far. And then this little box in the bottom right of the area I've highlighted, you can just click that and then drag it for the rest of it. Right? So it auto populates 1 through 10 for me, which is great. But that's a very, very simple way to do it. But you can also make it a little bit more complicated, right? So if you want to say, account 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And the next one is account 1, 2, 3, 5. ACC 1, 2, 3, 6. Right? So we just kind of created those. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's try it. It is going to work. Amazing. So it's just going to autofill all that information for me, which is great. So now I have a unique set of information there, and I can use this going forward as a kind of standard file or a standard way to create unique IDs. And so if I create another account, I know that its account number is going to be ACC 1244. That's going to be the next account that I might possibly create. So I just created that in a couple seconds here. Just make sure you set up your own format for creating unique IDs, or maybe the way you set it up is it's some sort of combination of day, time, year in which you actually created the account, and so that's always going to be unique because obviously dates never repeat. All right. I'll go ahead and close out of that. Next question I have here is, may you show me how to quickly replace the country abbreviation with the fully spelled out country? That is a great question. So going back to the country section here, we've got USA. Again, like we said before, same thing with the states. It's better to have it fully spelled out. So instead of USA here, I would just type in United States. Great. And then again, guys, remember this little green box at the bottom. It's difficult to point to because if I hover over it, then it changes. But this little green box at the bottom of this larger green box right here is a great tool in Excel. And basically what it allows you to do is just copy things, right? So I'm just going to drag it down, and it's going to auto populate that entire area with the text that I put up there. Again, so if everything here was USA and I wanted to make the changes to the rest of these, I type it in that top box and then I just drag it down. Right, so I'm gonna go ahead and undo that just because I don't actually want to do that. In the United States, perfect. All right, great question. So the next one I have is, may you put the concatenate formula here in the chat box so I can copy and paste it for future reference? Absolutely. So let me go ahead and just type it in. So it's going to be equals concatenate. You guys still see my screen? I think so, but I don't know if you can see me typing here. Let me just copy and paste the one that I have here. It might be easier. So this is the one that I just set in the chat. That is the concatenate function that I created here, which basically allowed me to merge these two different columns. So this is sales region and payment preference. The important thing to note is that the O2 and the P2 are the references to those cells in Excel. And then just make sure that you have that same combination of characters, comma, quotations, semicolon, quotations, comma, to separate out each of the groups that you've created. All right. So that was great. The next one is, are these a list of colors? Yes. So someone's done a great service to everyone, and they've provided a list of all of the available colors that you can use to import into MMC, which is, I think it's about 25 different colors. You can use any of those. Just remember to make sure that whenever you're importing colors, you always have them as lowercase because that's the only way that the system will take them. All right, next question I see here is, do all columns have to be filled, which are mandatory? Great question, Dan. So when you're running an import, so this is actually something that we're going to cover in a second here when we actually run an import, but there's two different, or there's several different entities that you can import. You can import accounts, you can also import contacts, and lastly, you can import deals. Each of them have a different set of mandatory fields, and you'll see them marked once you're going through the import. For accounts, there's actually only two mandatory fields, and that is account name and country. You can see there's an asterisk right next to country. There should be one here next to account name as well. So let me go ahead and add that. So the only two required fields excuse me, for accounts are account name and country. Now, of course, any additional information that you want to put in there is only going to serve to help you. So make sure to put in any information that's pertinent or relevant to the accounts that you're working through setup. All right, so I think that Excel files are probably the most complicated part of the import, making sure that everything is set up the way that it should be or the way that you need it to be will make the import process so much more smooth. So hopefully we've gone through enough. Of course, everyone's going to have their own unique use case, and we couldn't possibly go through everything. But if you do have a question that I could help you with, please feel free to either put it in the chat or wait until the Q&A portion at the end. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save this file here. Let me make sure it is a CSV. So that's an important note. Whenever you're importing a file, just switch it over to CSV so that you can run the import properly. So we're just going to call this one MMC sample file. Great, it's a CSV, save. This work cannot be saved. Oh, okay. So this one has a file for accounts as well as contacts. So that's actually a great time to go over to the contact sheet to show you how they differ. So not a ton of differences here. You have, again, a unique account name. You've got a contact unique ID. So that's actually, okay, let's take another step back here. So when you are importing contacts, you have the ability to actually associate them to existing accounts that are already in Map My Customers. So basically what that means is, let's take this first account number here. And I did say account number. Right next to it are the contact numbers. So for the account number, you can see that there's the 4 ones on the top here are the exact same account number. The reason being is that these first 4 contacts are at the exact same account, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go back to our file here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is Map My Customers. So when I look here at these first 4 contacts, Louise, Matt, Zika, and Natalie, all should be associated to Map My Customers. So basically what I'm telling the system is, these 4 contacts are unique. I want you to create a unique record for each of them, but I want them to all be associated to this account, right? So you've got the contact name, the contact ID, and then separate from that, what's called the account number, or the account external identifier when you go to import it. So let me actually separate this here. So we're going to copy that. We're going to create another file, which is new. And we're just going to paste. So this is our contact sheet. File. Save as. Contact sample file. Again, remember to switch it over to CSV. And save. Perfect. So now we can go back in here. We can delete this other tab. Delete. And then now we can save this. Let's double check this is a CSV. Perfect. Fine. Replace. Okay. So now I actually want to go through and run through an import. So we're going to switch back over to the MMC account. Give me just a second here. And we're going to run through an import. While I'm doing that, does anyone have any questions about the process of, excuse me, the process of associating a existing account to, or existing, I'm sorry, the process of associating a contact that you're importing to an existing account via unique identifier? So essentially, you just have to make sure that whenever you're running the import, you have both the account number for the account that you're wanting to associate to and the contact ID on the same row. So like I showed you a second ago with the contact file, there was 4 of the exact same account number next to 4 unique contact numbers, meaning all 4 of those unique contact numbers will be associated to that one account. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go through quickly and create a few custom fields, just so you guys can see what that process looks like as well. So let me share my screen here. All right, can you guys see my account? I'm back on January webinar, january@webinar.com. That is a great email address. Just want to make sure you guys can see it. Hopefully, yes. Okay, perfect. All right, so remember we mentioned before that whenever you're going to import a file, you have to make sure that the fields that you're importing into exist, right? So on our sheet, all of those gray boxes are pre-existing fields, and then the orange ones are or yeah, the orange ones to the right-hand side are the custom fields. So you have to make sure when you come into Map My Customers that those custom fields actually exist. So we're just going to go through and create a couple just so you can see what those look like. So this is the custom field section, by the way. We're just going to go through and create one called fax number. And then I'm just going to also add that into the placeholder text. Great. And then I think we had one called sales region. So we're actually going to do a text field for time, but I would typically recommend using probably one of our drop-down features or drop-down custom fields. Great, so sales region is there as well. And then we also want payment preference. So again, I would typically recommend using a drop-down for this, but we're just gonna use a standard text field. Perfect, so now that these three fields exist, we actually have a place to import that information into. So we're gonna go ahead and go up here to the plus button. We're gonna click plus and then go down to import. Important thing to mention here, the only person who has import access is the account owner. So if your reps are ever saying, hey, I can't find a place to import, there's a good reason for that. It's because they are not able to import. So if they have any files, you can just go ahead and import them on your account if you're the account owner, and then you can share them with your team. All right, so this is the import page. There's a sample file here, which will help you do a lot of the things we just did. We're going to go to continue. This is where you actually drop the file. So the first file that we're going to drop here is going to be the sample file. So we're going to first import our accounts, and then we're going to go back and import our contacts. So this first radio option here might be a little bit confusing, but my rule of thumb would be if you are using unique identifiers, if you're using account numbers, which I would highly recommend that you do because it will let you make updates a lot easier later on. If you're using account numbers, use the second option. So let me just say that again. If you're using account numbers, use the second option. All right. So in this part, I typically just click do not modify. I've put my address information incorrectly, so I don't want to change anything. And then we're importing into accounts. And so we're going to just click accounts there. All right, continue. Okay, so this page is where you actually map out the import that you're working through. So you have this select unique identifier box at the top, right? Select a value that is unique per row. This might be an account number or a contact ID. Great. So this is where you go through and you click account number / unique ID. Great. So this is where you put that row that's unique to each account, or that column that's unique to each account. And then when you actually find it down here in the import, just go ahead and click skip. So again, when you're running your imports and you're looking to import unique identifiers, mark that column that is the unique identifier column at the top. And then in the actual column matching, wherever you find the account number, go ahead and just mark it as skip. This is basically telling the system, I don't want you to do anything with this as far as importing it into a field. I want you to take it as the unique identifier, put it on the database side, and use it to match against other accounts that I might use in the future, right? So hopefully that's pretty clear. If anyone has any questions about that, you can ask me to clarify or go through that again. And then for the rest of this, we're just going to go through and match things. So this is street, street address, city, city, state, state, zip, zip, country, country, website, website, pin color, number of employees, phone, email, groups. And then we have sales region, which automatically, so this dividing line here under website is the dividing line between standard fields, which is all of the stuff that's the same on everyone's account, and then custom fields, which you guys just saw me create. So we created fax number, payment preference, and sales region. So then sales region is already marked. Great. Payment preference is already marked. Great. And then now you've got account name. So we're just going to mark the account name. And again, you can see here that account name has an asterisk next to it, meaning that it is required as you're running the import. If I didn't mark this and I tried to click finish, it would say error, make sure to mark your account number or account name like it's required for it. So we're going to click that. And then fax is just going to be fax. All right, so we've basically marked all the fields we want to mark. Great, everything's great. If we didn't want to import one of these fields, for example, if I already created these accounts and I didn't want to update the phone number, for example, you can just go ahead and skip any particular row and it won't bring in that information, right? So once we're happy with it, just go ahead and click finish. And we are off to the races. I think I just saw a chat come in. All right, so someone asked, and this is something that is a great question, is why did I skip the account number as I was going through the import? So we're gonna go through the import again with contacts. And you can also go in and see the status of your import at any time. So this one's running. For some reason, because there's data in additional rows as far as the coloration, I don't think that's the word. So there's colors marked or highlighted in every row like that. The standard fields, remember, we marked as gray and the custom fields were orange. Basically, the system thinks there's additional information there. So we're just gonna, now it should be pretty close to done here. So we're gonna refresh. And there you go. You can see the accounts are completed. 10 were created, which is perfect because we only had 10 accounts. And then we had 999 rows and 989 errors, meaning, hey, there's no information here. I don't know what to do. So that makes sense. So great, successful import. Now we can go back into our account section and we'll actually be able to see those accounts imported. Beautiful. Man, those are some handsome looking accounts. So now that we have all this information in there and you can kind of go through and spot check, this is account 6, account 2, I'm guessing that my customers is up here somewhere. Awesome. So now this is going to be a great time to do a couple things. One, we're going to import contacts, and then we're also going to revisit the concept of account identifiers and contact identifiers to explain a little bit more about that. So again, we're just going to go here and click contact sample file, just select the file that you would like. Remember, the second radio option is what we want to select here because we're using unique identifiers, right? So anytime you're using unique identifiers, select the second option. And then down here, instead of accounts, we're going to click contacts because we are importing contacts. All right, continue. So this is the point that we were at before. Remember, the unique identifier, so up here where we're doing select unique identifier, this is where you want to mark that unique ID. So because we're importing contacts, we want to mark the contact unique ID because that is the unique value that this system will be able to find on the Excel file that I'm uploading to mark to each individual contact. So again, we're going to mark it here, and then wherever you find it down here, contact unique ID, we're going to skip it. Again, the reason being is because I'm telling the system there isn't any field that I want you to import this into. I just want you to use it as the unique identifier on the back end, on the database side, to make sure that I don't create duplicates, to make sure this is a unique record, to make sure that I can use this field to merge in the future. So mark it up here in the unique identifier section, and then wherever you find it, so contact unique ID is right here, make sure to mark it, excuse me, make sure to mark it as skip. The other important thing to note is because we've already imported accounts, remember when I mentioned on the contact file, because I already imported accounts at this point, I would want to mark not only the unique identifier for the contacts, but also the unique identifier for the associated accounts that I want the contacts tied to. right? So remember on the sheet we had the account ID, and then we had 4 of the same one next to 4 unique contact IDs. And that was because all 4 of those contacts, I think it was Louise, Matt, Zika, and Natalie, are all associated to this account number, which is Matt My Customers. So now, wherever you find that column for the account numbers, you have to mark it, which it automatically did, as the account external identifier. This is basically saying, okay, database, I want you to create contact with using these unique IDs. So this contact unique ID, I want you to create unique contacts using these unique IDs that I've put in. And I want you to associate them. So basically tie them in, and we'll show you what it looks like in a second here once we actually get into it. But I want you to associate those contacts to this account number. So whatever this is on the row of the contact, I want you to associate that contact to that account. So just mark it as the account external identifier for the account numbers. And the contact unique ID, we're going to skip here. We're going to mark it up top. And then the rest of it is exactly the same. So we're going to do street, city, state. Let me just double check here. So zip, country, color, phone, email, and then contact name, right? So we're going to go contact name. This is also a required field here. So we're going to mark it number of employees. I don't think exists in contacts, so we can skip that. Phone, we're going to go to, I think phone's already marked. Yep, up here. Role, right? So that, again, is not an existing field. So if these are, for example, unique fields or custom fields, I would have already had to create them in the settings section, just like we did for accounts. I didn't. Therefore, they don't exist. Therefore, there's nothing for me to import into, right? So this is the importance of creating the custom field before the import process, is because now I don't have anywhere to import role into, right? So this is the main decision maker. I'm not going to know that because I can't import that anywhere. So we're just going to go ahead and skip that for now. Happy with everything else. Again, it's just creating additional fields here because we added the coloring, and then we're going to go ahead and click finish, as in from Finland. Sorry, that's a lame joke. And then we're going to give it some time here to run that import. Again, you can see the status of your import. So obviously for 10 records, it's pretty quick. But if you're running, 1,000 records, 10,000 records, it's going to take a long time. So you can see the status is currently running. The status of the accounts is completed. It's already created those contact IDs for me, which is great. So we're going to go ahead and refresh here and see if that is done. And there we go. So we have 10 unique accounts and 10 unique contacts. Perfect. So let's go ahead and show you what those look like. So again, the accounts we already looked at, so we can go to each of those accounts here, and they'll be mapped out for us. Beautiful. And then you can see the list view as well. So these are all the accounts created. So remember, when we were importing the contacts, we associated several different contacts to one account. So this is that account. So we have Map My Customers, we have all the data that we just imported, and then we have 4 different contacts, Louise, Matt, Zika, and Natalie, all associated to this account, which is amazing. That is super helpful, right? So if you're a person who's looking to, work with Map My Customers, you can now see all of the people that you might be working with on the same associated account. So remember, let me go ahead and switch back to the sheet, actually. I think that would be helpful now. So we're looking for the contact sheet. Okay. So share. Okay. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. Remember, when we were running the import for contacts, there was the account number, which we marked as the account external identifier. And then there was the contact unique ID, which we marked as the unique identifier, and then we skipped down below. This is the result of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the top 4. And so basically just saying, hey, find this account and then associate all of these contacts to it. So these 4 contacts I want to associate to that account. The result of it is what we just looked at, which is that Map My Customers account, which has 4 different contacts associated to it, right? So this, again, I'm on Map My Customers, and I've got all these different contacts associated to it. So that's the power of having unique identifiers, is not only can you update things later on and you can make sure things are changed the way they need to be, but you can also do mass association, right? So for example, if you wanted to import Map My Customers, you can associate, as many records, as many contacts as you want. And the same thing goes for deals, right? So let's say I'm working on multiple deals with Map My Customers. I can associate all of those same deals via the import process the exact same way I did with the contacts. So I would just have unique IDs for each deal, and then one ID for all of the deals that are associated to Map My Customers. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, we can just go into the contact section to see all of the contacts we just imported. Beautiful. And that's pretty much everything that I wanted to go through. Again, importing is very much unique to each business. Of course, you guys are going to have different custom fields. You're going to have different groups. You're probably going to have different, unique IDs and kind of structure for your data and everything. But the basics are the same. So make sure that you create your custom fields in Map My Customers before you run the import. Make sure you concatenate all of your groups into one groups column. Make sure to have your state and countries be written out instead of the acronym, and then make sure that you have unique IDs. So let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. Let's see here. And how might I click into that? So if someone could help me out, there seems to be a notification in the Q&A section. I'm not sure how to access it. Let's see here. Yeah, guys, unfortunately, I'm not sure how to pull up the Q&A section. So if you have any questions, please just copy and paste them into the chat section, which would be amazing. So I see a question here. How do you get from several company names, each with a different contact name, all under the same company name, like it was before the update? Let me see if I can understand what you're asking here. How do I get from several company names, each with a different contact name, all under the same company like it was before the update? So I'm guessing you're asking about a scenario on the legacy platform where you might have had a one-to-one relationship with one account to one contact. If you can clarify for me there in the chat box, I'm guessing what you're asking, and so I'll just answer that. Basically, all you would need to do is have the one-to-one relationship in the imports that we were just talking about. So if when I was going through the Map My Customers example, I had 4 of the same account numbers associated to the contacts. So I would just have a one-to-one relationship where I have the account number in one column, the contact number in another column, and then all of the appropriate data. And it would just have unique IDs on each row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the accounts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the contacts. That would mean 1 and 1 are associated, 2 and 2 are associated, 3 and 3 are associated. Hopefully that makes sense. I think this would probably be easier to demonstrate on an Excel file. Oh, there we go. The Q&A section opened in a different page. Perfect. It's right here. And it's the same question. Perfect. So guys, if you have questions on the Q&A section, you can go ahead and put those. I found it. Or you can put them in the chat, 100% up to you. But let's go ahead and load up that contacts file here. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen. So the gentleman asked if I'm going to have a one-to-one relationship for accounts and contacts. Basically, remember, each of these is unique right now because this is our contact sheet, so we're trying to import these contacts as unique records. If you wanted to associate them each to a different account, just have each different account ID here. So right now, it looks like we're associating these 10 contacts to 3 different accounts, but we could make this 10 different accounts if we wanted to. So just put the correct account number here, and then it will associate these contacts to that account. Hopefully that answers your question. And then let me go back here. So I'll have to change all 5,000 pins I have. You can do it in mass. So if you have 5,000 contacts and 5,000 accounts, you can do it in mass, just have the correct things associated. That's the benefit of having account numbers and contact numbers, is that you can update things in mass. You don't have to go one by one, make those changes. You can update it via an Excel file. To be honest, I'm not 100% certain about your particular use case. So if you guys do have specific questions, feel free to reach out via the intercom link, and our support team would be more than happy to help you. I'm not 100% certain on what it is that you're looking to accomplish, and so I don't want to give you wrong information and lead you astray. All right. So does anyone else have any questions? Kind of going back and forth here from the Q&A section. Yes, typing. All right. We'll give you just a second here. Again, I know I threw a lot at you guys. There's a lot of information. But I would say that imports is one of those things that once you understand it, it's a breeze. So I have a lot of customers who are running imports on a pretty constant basis. Typically, it doesn't take them more than 5 minutes to run an import because all their stuff is aligned. They kind of know where things need to go, and they're running imports pretty quickly. The actual import process, as far as after you click finish to get all the data, might take a little bit longer than 5 minutes, especially if you have thousands of records. But setting everything up really isn't that challenging once you understand what you're looking at. All right. So let's see here. Okay, so another question I got is, what if I'm missing pieces of info in the address, states or zip codes? Great question. So we actually work with a couple of different mapping providers. We work with Google Maps and Apple Maps to plot, the different addresses that you guys put in. So basically the answer is we'll work with what we have. Obviously, the more information you give us, the more accurate the data. And so there's certain use cases where you'll put in an address and you just won't put in the state or the city or the zip code. You'll just put in the street address and the country, and there might be an identical street address elsewhere. And so the actual location might be in New York, but the pin might be plotted in Wyoming because we weren't given the exact information, and so the system might have just taken a guess at it. So what I would say is put in as much information as you have available, and you'll probably get the best results. But there's definitely times where you might not have information available, or you're looking for more of a general vicinity. That's perfectly fine. Just put in whatever you have. I will say that the country is required. That's the only field that is required during the import. As far as from the address side. but put in as much information as available, and then you can make adjustments for there. Great question. Anything else, guys? I know we're kind of up against the clock here, but I want to make sure that we get any more questions answered. Okay. I missed your first part of this, but I'm thinking I need to load my customers and allow the MMC ID to populate and hopefully place our ERP's unique alphanumeric ID in maybe the notes field, so I can have and tell the customer report link back to any updates in the ERP. Okay. So the short answer is no. Don't put your unique ID in the notes field. What I would recommend is, so one thing that a lot of customers do is you can actually create a custom field for your unique ID and then just duplicate that column in your Excel file. So you can import your Excel file and then mark one of those unique ID columns as the unique ID in MMC, and then mark one of them as whatever custom field you created. And so you can have that as a front end display, if that makes sense, if that kind of clarifies what you're asking. I think what you're asking is, if I have a unique ID, how do I have it show up in the front end? So let me know if that's not what you're asking. Oh, you just want to get it in the report. Okay, so great. So whenever you're uploading it, you actually wouldn't even need to create the custom field. When you're pulling the reports, there's a field called Import ID that you can check the box for. Let me actually go ahead and show you where that is. Give me just 1 second here. So we're going to share our screen. Great. So all you have to do is go to reports, and we're going to create our first report here. Fantastic. This is going to be accounts report. And then we're going to select fields. You can select all fields here. There should be an option right there for import ID. All right, so I'm actually going to deselect everything and just do name and import ID. And then you can see the import ID is the unique ID that I chose when I was running my import. And so if you want to be able to extract that whenever you're pulling information, let's say you're updating things in your ERP system, or maybe you want to mass update groups and use the same unique ID, just make sure you check the import ID box as you're running that report, and then you'll be able to get this unique ID associated with all of the relevant information. Does that answer your question? Hopefully so. All right, and then I think I saw another one in the chat. Let's see here. We run our addresses through a program called Smarty Streets, and it uses to validate the address while you use others. I'm not sure what you mean by validate the address. Basically, we don't do any of the mapping and visualization on our side. Everything is done through our partners. And so as far as displaying things on a map, whatever information is available to Google Maps is what we have access to. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by validate the address. But typically it will do its best to plot a pin on a map. If there's address information, so even if you give it just country, if you just put United States and no other address information, it will plot a pin in the middle of the United States. So even with minimal information, it'll try to put a pin on a map somewhere just so you have that visual component. But obviously the more information you give it, the more accurate that pin location will be. And then I get another question here. I can't access custom fields since I'm on a professional plan. Will I be able to upgrade to a higher plan to access custom fields? Absolutely. So you should be able to upgrade directly from your account. If not, feel free to reach out to the support team and we can get you upgraded, and then you can start to utilize custom fields. And again, like I showed you guys, obviously it's kind of brief just because there was a lot to get through today, but custom fields, there's actually 10 different types of custom fields. They're very customizable. Sorry for the pun. But you can basically create custom fields to mimic any sort of data type that you would need. There's multi-select drop-downs, single select drop-downs, address fields, text fields, large text fields if you want to put in paragraphs. Custom fields are pretty powerful. So if you don't have access to them, I would definitely look into potentially upgrading, just because they're really fantastic, especially for teams that need, additional information in the field outside of what standard fields can offer. Custom fields can be a great resource. All right. Let me get updated our custom using European. Okay. So if you're running the report and you don't get any data in the import IDs, it might just be because as you were going through the import process, things might not have been labeled correctly. That's no problem though. Just reach out to our team and hopefully we can help you work through that. Do I need to remove commas and apostrophes from all uploaded columns, including custom? Perhaps the issue is that I also tested your product right now for a company. Gotcha. So the short answer is no. You can basically, it's a CSV file when you're running the import, and so commas are used to separate out information. So just like we did for groups, when we were separating out different groups, you can use commas there as well. It just kind of depends on what you're looking to do, which is again kind of one of the challenges of a call like this is I'm not very much into the weeds with you, and so I can't really answer the specifics of your question, and I apologize for that. Again, if you do have questions, please do reach out to our support team and we can help you work through that. But I don't want to give you information and have it be wrong because it's so specific to your use case. But the short answer is no, commas won't break your import. All right, so I don't see any more questions, so we'll go ahead and conclude there. Thank you guys so much for, I see one more. Can I make a custom field while in test? Great question. Unfortunately, you cannot create custom fields while you're in a test account. Basically, test accounts are equivalent to our starter plans. Custom fields is an enterprise feature. So if you're looking to create custom fields, I would just talk to our support team or our sales team, and they can help you guys get set up with that. And you'll be able to create custom fields from that point. You need to know the address is not accepted as entered. Gotcha. So another question was, validating means checking the address against the official address database in the country the address is located in. The Maps API does not validate address. Having it in the United States is not useful. That is a good point. We need to know the address was not accepted as entered. So that is a great question. Unfortunately, the way that the system works is we get a lot of people putting in address information that might be general or generic. A lot of the times they kind of update that information as they go along. Maybe the location changes, or maybe they just didn't have all the correct address information, so they might have put in just a zip code. So unfortunately, we don't do address validation. But as your team kind of starts going out there, the benefit of having a field CRM is that they can start to update that information. Let's say you're at the location now. We have a feature in the app where you can just mark your Find Me button, and it'll update the location based off of where you currently are. And so you can start to clean up a lot of that information as you go through. But unfortunately, we do not validate the address information. Is there anything that can be sent to us saying the address is not found as entered? Unfortunately not. Yeah, just like I said, there's no way to validate the address information. It just kind of does its best. And then someone asked, how soon can you access the recording? Basically, we have to take some time for the recording to generate. Once it does, it will be posted up on our website. I would imagine no later than the end of this week, and you will have access to this recording after that. And I think someone raised their hand. I cannot see it now. If someone raised their hand and wanted to speak, could you please do that again? I can't see it for some reason. It's not popping up anymore. Okay. All right. Maybe it was by mistake. All right, guys. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure everyone probably still has questions. Again, feel free to reach out to our support team, and hopefully we can get those answered for you. Hopefully I did help to some degree walking you guys through imports, but again, it is very specific to each use case. And yeah, that's pretty much it from our side. Again, guys, my name is Zika. I'm one of the CSMs, and hopefully we'll get the chance to work together. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.